Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I'm glad you could join me for this journey.
The USB drive arrived on Tuesday morning, enclosed in a brown envelope with no return address. Evan Lark turned it over in his hands, studying the simple piece of plastic that was about to shatter his marriage in the next 60 seconds. He inserted it into his laptop without hesitation. The video file opened, showing shaky footage of a hotel room, expensive sheets, champagne bottles, and his wife, Celia, pressed against a man who wasn't him. The timestamp read, 3 days ago, Saturday night, Naya Greer's bachelorette party. Evan's coffee grew cold as he watched Celia laugh, kiss the other man's neck, and stumble towards the bed. The camera followed them, capturing everything with clinical precision. A text overlay appeared in the lower corner. Thought you should know, T. His phone vibrated, a number he didn't recognize. Evan, it's Theo Marsh from Jefferson High. I was working that party on Saturday. Evan remembered Theo, a quiet kid who was bullied until Evan stood up for him in their senior year. It seemed Theo remembered too. Why? Evan asked, his voice steady despite the earthquake in his chest. Because you saved my life once, Theo said. Now I'm returning the favor. The call ended. Evan sat in his cramped insurance office surrounded by claim folders in the glow of fluorescent lights, watching his marriage disintegrate in high definition. Celia appeared on the screen again, whispering something to her lover that made him laugh. The man's face came into focus. Adrian Kahns, from Celia's logistics company. Evan closed the laptop. He was 39 years old and understood that everything he had built was erected on a lie. But instead of rage, something colder, something calculating, settled in his chest. He took out his phone and called his doctor's office. I need to schedule STD tests for my wife and myself, he said calmly. Today, if possible. Dr. Martinez delivered the results with professional sympathy. Evan sat across from her desk, while Celia fidgeted nervously in the chair beside him. The good news is, everything is treatable, Dr. Martinez explained. But you've both tested positive for chlamydia. It's common, and with antibiotics. How? Celia interrupted, her voice higher than usual. We've been monogamous for 8 years. Evan watched his wife's performance with detached interest. The slight tremor in her hands, the way she avoided his gaze. She was good. He gave her that. But not good enough. Sometimes these things can lie dormant, Dr. Martinez said diplomatically. The important thing is treatment. Celia nodded vigorously. Of course, yes. We'll get right on that. They drove home in silence. Celia stared out the passenger window as Evan navigated the evening traffic of Richmond. Their house was in Windsor Farms, a neighborhood that screamed success to anyone driving past. Celia had insisted on it when her salary as an HR director allowed them to get the mortgage. Evan, she finally said as they pulled into the driveway, about the test results. These things happen, he replied, killing the engine, like the doctor said. Relief washed over her face. She reached over and squeezed his hand. I love you, she said. I know, Evan said. That night, he waited until Celia was asleep before moving to his home office. He opened their joint bank account, credit card statements, and phone records. Everything he had ignored for months suddenly made perfect sense. The late nights, the new clothes, the way she had started working out and buying expensive lingerie he never saw. His phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. Check her work tablet. She left it charging in the kitchen. Evan crept downstairs. Celia's tablet sat plugged in next to the coffee maker, password protected. He tried their anniversary date, nothing. Her birthday, nothing. On an impulse, he typed in Adrian's name. The screen unlocked. WhatsApp was still open in a group chat titled Bad Bitches Club. It had 4 participants, Celia, Naya Granger, and 2 other women Evan recognized from their social circle. He started scrolling, unsure at first what he was looking for, until the messages began to paint a version of his wife he didn't recognize. One line jumped out at him immediately. Evan's working late again, Celia had written. Perfect time for Adrian. The message was accompanied by a devil emoji. Nia quickly replied, Girl, you're playing with fire. What if he finds out? Please, Celia responded. Evan is too boring to suspect anything. He thinks I'm some saint who goes to a book club twice a week. Evan kept scrolling, his finger tense on the screen. A little further down, Naya made a confession of her own. Speaking of playing with fire, Marcus and I hooked up again. 3 weeks before my wedding, El Mao. You're terrible, Celia replied. Poor Declan has no idea who he's marrying. What he doesn't know won't hurt him, Nia said, Besides, once I'm married to Vaughn with his trust fund access, I can do whatever I want. Evan blinked. The messages kept coming. They only got worse. For months, the women had traded lies, laughed at their partners, and shared details of their affairs. Celia's messages stood out, too vivid to ignore. Told Evan I was at a client dinner, she'd written. Meanwhile, Adrian and I booked a room at the Jefferson until midnight. Naya replied, "Girl, I swear you're going to end up on one of those true crime podcasts." "Only if Evan ever grows a spine," Celia retorted, "which is unlikely." His jaw tightened, but his hands moved purposefully. He took screenshots of every message. Then came the most recent exchange, just 3 days ago, right before the bachelorette party. "One last crazy night before Naya becomes a boring housewife," Celia said. "I'll bring my friend Adrian." "This party's going to be epic," Naya replied. "What happens in Richmond stays in Richmond." Evan read the words 3 times before slowly placing the tablet back exactly as he found it. Upstairs, Celia was fast asleep, one arm lazily stretched out on his side of the bed. In the dim light filtering through the curtains, she looked peaceful, beautiful, undeserving. He turned without a sound and returned to his office. At his desk, he opened a new browser window. It was time to learn everything he could about Adrian Carnes. Adrian was easy to research. LinkedIn showed a successful career in logistics, a rapid climb up the corporate ladder at Cornerstone Transport Solutions, married to Rebecca Carnes, a pediatric nurse. 2 children, 8 and 10. The family lived in a modest suburban home in Mechanicsville, about 20 minutes from Richmond. Evan cross-referenced Adrian's and Celia's social media data. They were careful. No public interactions, no tagged photos. But metadata told a different story. Location services placed them at the same restaurants, the same hotels, the same coffee shops on the same days for the past 6 months. His phone rang. Theo again. "Did you watch the video?" "Yes. There's more. I recorded audio from the hallway. Your wife and that bride, Nia, they were talking about their husbands, saying some pretty vile things. Send it to me." The audio file came through a few minutes later. Evan plugged in his headphones and listened as his wife's voice came through the hotel room walls. "God, Evan is so predictable," Celia was saying. "The same boring routine every night, the same boring job, the same boring everything. Adrian makes me feel alive again." "At least you know what you're getting," Nia replied. "Declan's sweet, but he's basically a golden retriever with a trust fund. 0 backbone. I need a man who can actually take charge, you know?" "That's what our side pieces are for," Celia laughed. "The best of both worlds. Boring stability at home, the thrill when we want it." "Exactly. And after I marry Vaughn, I'll have enough money to really do whatever I want. Maybe even get out of Richmond altogether. Start fresh somewhere more exciting." "What about Vaughn?" "What about Vaughn? He'll be heartbroken for like 6 months, then find some other woman to worship. Guys like that always do." Evan saved the file and leaned back in his office chair. The house was quiet, save for the hum of the central air conditioner. Outside, Richmond slept peacefully, unaware that several lives were about to change forever. He opened a new document and started typing. Plans needed to be made, timelines established, resources allocated. Evan approached revenge the same way he did insurance claims, methodically, thoroughly, and with an eye for maximum payout. By dawn, he had a strategy. The next morning, Celia fluttered into the kitchen in leggings and a sports bra. She kissed Evan on the cheek as he ate breakfast and read the Richmond Times-Dispatch. "Good morning, handsome," she said cheerfully. "I was thinking we should plan a weekend trip soon. Maybe Virginia Beach. We haven't had any time alone in ages." "Sounds nice," Evan replied, not looking up from the paper. "When were you thinking?" "After Nia's wedding. I'll be so exhausted from all the bridesmaid duties." She poured coffee into a travel mug. "Speaking of, I have to run some errands for the bachelorette today. Last-minute details, you know." Evan nodded. "What time will you be home?" "Probably late. You know how wedding planning is." She grabbed her purse and keys. "Don't wait up." "Drive safe," Evan said. After she left, he made 3 phone calls. The first was to Tommy Rodriguez, a private investigator he'd worked with on insurance fraud cases. The second was to Janet Mills, a divorce attorney whose reputation for aggressive tactics was legendary in Richmond legal circles. The third was to his bank. "I need to transfer some funds to a separate account," he told his personal banker. "One that my wife won't have access to." "Of course, Mr. Lark. What amounts are we talking about?" "Everything." By noon, Evan had hired a PI, retained counsel, and moved 90% of their liquid assets to an account Celia didn't know existed. His name was removed from their joint credit cards, and he began the process of documenting every shared asset for potential division. Tommy called him at 2 p.m. "I've got eyes on your wife," the detective reported. "She's at Adrian Carnes' apartment complex. Been there about an hour. Get photos, video if possible." "Already on it." "This guy's pretty sloppy about covering his tracks. Parked right out front in broad daylight." Evan drove to his insurance office and spent the day processing claims. Workers' comp fraud, suspicious house fires, staged car accidents. The same schemes repeated endlessly. People thought they were clever, not realizing lies always left evidence. At 6 p.m., Tommy sent him a gallery of photos. Celia entering Adrian's building. Celia at Adrian's window, clearly visible and laughing. Celia leaving 3 hours later with disheveled hair and smeared lipstick. Evan forwarded the photos to Janet Mills with a note. "Documentary evidence? More to come." Celia came home at 8:30, claiming she had been shopping for wedding decorations. As proof, she showed him bags from Target and Bath and Body Works. "How was your day?" Evan asked. "Tiring but productive. Nia is so picky about everything. I swear, bridezillas are real." She kicked off her shoes and flopped onto the sofa. "How was your day?" "Quiet. Processed a few claims. Nothing exciting." She snuggled up to him while they watched Netflix. Evan stroked her hair and made appropriate noises at her comments about the show. She was warm and familiar against his side. For a moment, he almost forgot about the photos on his phone. Almost. Thursday morning brought an unexpected gift. Evan was reviewing claim files when his office phone rang. "Mr. Lark, this is Marcus Chen from Cornerstone Transport Solutions. I understand you handle insurance investigations." Evan straightened up. "That's correct. How can I help you?" "We have a situation with one of our senior analysts. Possible misconduct involving company resources. We need someone discreet to look into it." "What kind of misconduct?" "Sexual harassment. An employee reported inappropriate behavior, possible quid pro quo situations. We need documentation before we can take action." Evan smiled. "I'd be happy to discuss this further." "Who is the employee in question?" "Adrian Carnes. Do you know him?" "Not personally, but I can certainly investigate objectively." They scheduled a meeting for Friday morning. Evan hung up and immediately called Tommy. "I need you to dig deeper into Adrian Carnes' work situation, specifically any complaints, HR issues, or inappropriate relationships with coworkers." "Got it. Anything specific to look for?" "Everything. This guy's about to have a very bad week." That evening, Celia announced she was having dinner with Nia to discuss final wedding preparations. "We'll probably be out late," she said, applying lipstick in the bedroom mirror. "Bridal crisis mode, you know?" "Of course. Give Nia my best." "I will." Evan waited 30 minutes after she left, then drove to Adrian's apartment complex. Tommy had given him the address, and sure enough, Celia's Honda was parked outside Building C. He positioned himself across the street with a good view of the entrance and settled in to wait. His patience was rewarded. At 11:47 p.m., Celia and Adrian emerged together, holding hands and kissing goodbye like teenagers. She clung to him for a full minute before finally walking to her car. Evan photographed everything. When Celia returned home at midnight, she found Evan reading in bed. "How was dinner?" he asked casually. "Stressful. Poor Nia is second-guessing the flowers. We had to call 3 different vendors." She disappeared into the bathroom and emerged in her pajamas, her face cleansed of makeup. "I'm exhausted." "Sweet dreams," Evan said. She curled up next to him with a contented sigh. "Love you." "I love you too." The Friday meeting with Cornerstone Transport went better than Evan had hoped. Marcus Chen, the director of HR, was desperate and needed help. "Adrian has been with us for 5 years, Chen explained. "Good employee, solid performance reviews. But 3 weeks ago, we got a complaint from one of our coordinators. She claims Adrian offered her a promotion in exchange for sexual favors. Did she file a formal complaint?" "She was afraid at first, but another woman came forward yesterday with similar allegations. We need to know if there's a pattern we've missed." Evan took detailed notes. "I'll need access to personnel files, security camera logs, and the ability to interview employees confidentially." "Agreed. When can you start?" "Immediately." Evan spent the day at the Cornerstone office reviewing Adrian's employment history and interviewing colleagues. A picture emerged of a man who had grown increasingly bold over the past year. Inappropriate comments, unwanted touching, pressuring subordinate women who needed favorable performance reviews. One woman, Sarah Kim, was particularly candid. Adrian started acting weird about 6 months ago, she told Evan during a private interview. More aggressive, more entitled, like he thought he was untouchable. Anything specific trigger the change in behavior? He started talking about this affair he was having, with some married woman who made him feel like a king, he said. It really pumped up his ego, I guess. Evan nodded sympathetically. Did he mention the woman's name? Celia, I think. He showed me a picture of her once. Pretty blonde. Looked like she had money. He was obsessed with her. Thank you, Sarah. That's very helpful. By 5 p.m., Evan had compiled a comprehensive report documenting Adrian's misconduct. He also planted a small recording device in Adrian's office, completely illegal, but necessary for what was to come. Celia was already home when he arrived, cooking dinner and humming cheerfully. Perfect timing, she said, kissing his cheek. I made your favorite, chicken parmesan with pasta. She only cooked his favorite when she felt guilty about something. Smells amazing. What's the occasion? No occasion? Can't a wife make dinner for her husband? She poured him a glass of wine and sat across from him at the dining table. So, how was work? Any interesting cases? Just the usual fraud investigations. Nothing too exciting. I was thinking maybe we should take that vacation sooner rather than later. Everything's been so stressful with the wedding, work, all of it. We could use some time for us. Evan twirled pasta on his fork, considering her words. You seem tense lately. Anything specific bothering you? Celia's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Just the usual stuff. You know how demanding my job can be. And with Naya's wedding next week, she shrugged. It'll all settle down soon. I'm sure it will. After dinner, they watched a movie together. Celia fell asleep with her head on his shoulder, breathing softly against his neck. She looked peaceful, young, nothing like the woman he'd heard on that audio recording. Evan carefully extricated himself and went to his office. An email from Tommy awaited him with the subject line, The Jackpot. The attached photo showed Adrian leaving work at 3 p.m., 2 hours early, and driving straight to a downtown Richmond hotel. 30 minutes later, Celia's Honda appeared in the same parking lot. There were more photos. Adrian and Celia entering the hotel together. Adrian's hand on the small of her back as they waited for the elevator. Timestamps showed they were inside for over 2 hours. Evan saved everything to a secure folder and began planning the second phase. Saturday morning was gray and humid, typical for Richmond in late summer. Celia spent an hour getting ready for what she called Nia's wedding dress fitting. I'll probably be gone most of the day, she told Evan. You know how it is. Try on a dress. Hate it. Try on another dress. Start all over. Sounds exhausting. Need me to pick anything up while you're out? Just groceries if you get a chance. We're almost out of everything. She kissed him goodbye and left in a cloud of expensive perfume. Evan waited until her car disappeared around the corner, then called Tommy. She just left. Where are you? Already on her. She's not headed to bridal shops, by the way. She's going to Adrian's. Don't lose her. I need to know where they go today. Evan drove to the grocery store as promised, but instead of shopping, he sat in his car and made calls. The first call was to Rebecca Carnes, Adrian's wife. Mrs. Carnes, my name is Evan Lark. I'm a private investigator working on a case that involves your husband. Could we meet briefly? I have some information you need to see. Rebecca's voice was cautious but curious. What kind of information? The kind that explains why your husband has been working so many late nights lately. They met at a coffee shop in Mechanicsville. Rebecca was younger than Evan expected, in her late 30s, with tired eyes and the slightly frayed look of someone juggling a career and small children. My husband is cheating, she said without preamble once they were seated. That's why you called, right? Evan nodded. I'm sorry. How long have you suspected? Months. He's been different, distracted, always on his phone. She stirred her coffee absently. I found hotel receipts in his car last week. Confronted him about it. What did he say? That it was for work, client meetings. Rebecca laughed bitterly. I may be tired, but I'm not stupid. Who has client meetings at hotels on a Saturday afternoon? Evan took out his phone and showed her one of Tommy's photos. Adrian and Celia entering the hotel yesterday. Her name is Celia Lark, he said quietly. She's my wife. Rebecca stared at the photo for a long moment. When she looked up, her eyes were glistening. How long? She asked. At least 6 months. That I can prove? Probably longer. God, she covered her face with her hands. The kids. How do I explain this to the kids? You don't have to do anything right now, Evan said gently, but I think we can help each other. Adrian is facing serious consequences at work. If you're planning to leave him, Now is a good time to protect yourself financially? Rebecca wiped her eyes and looked at him with new interest. What consequences? Evan told her about the sexual harassment complaints in his investigation. He also shared some of the photos Tommy had taken. Nothing explicit, just proof of the affair. I want copies of everything, Rebecca said when he finished. And I want him to pay for what he's done to our family. I can arrange that. They spent another hour planning. By the time they parted, Rebecca had the name of a good divorce attorney and a promise that Evan would share any additional evidence he uncovered. Tommy called as Evan was driving home. Your wife and her boyfriend just checked into the presidential suite at the Jefferson Hotel. They're planning to spend the whole day there. Perfect. Photograph them coming and going, timestamps on everything. Already on it. Oh, and boss, they stopped at a jewelry store first. Adrian bought something expensive. Evan felt the first real flash of anger since this whole saga began. A jewelry store. Adrian was buying his wife gifts with money that was supposed to support his real family. Which store? Schwarzschild downtown. They were in there for about 20 minutes. Evan drove to Schwarzschild and had a brief, productive conversation with the clerk who had served Adrian. A small mention of his name and a fabricated story about an insurance review was all it took to learn that Adrian had purchased a diamond bracelet for $3,000. For Celia, using a credit card that was probably already maxed out, if Rebecca's suspicions about their finances were correct. Evan sat in his car outside the jewelry store and felt something cold and final settle in his chest. This was no longer just an affair. Adrian was making long-term investments in his wife, planning for a future that involved stealing her away from their marriage. Time to accelerate the timeline. He called Janet Mills, his divorce attorney. I need to move faster than we discussed, he told her. File the papers on Monday. I want them served to her at work, publicly, with maximum embarrassment. Are you sure? We discussed the advantages of waiting to build a stronger case. The case is strong enough, and I want it done before she has a chance to hide any more assets or make plans with her boyfriend. All right, I'll prepare the papers. What about spousal support? She won't get a dime. Trust me on that. Sunday passed quietly. Celia returned home from her supposed dress fitting with shopping bags and a new diamond bracelet, which she claimed was a gift from Naya for being such a wonderful bridesmaid. It's beautiful, Evan said, examining the bracelet. Looks expensive. Nia's family has money, Celia said easily. She wanted to get something special for all her bridesmaids. Very generous of her. They spent the evening watching Netflix and discussing mundane household problems. What to do about the leak in the guest bathroom, whether to refinance the mortgage, plans for Thanksgiving with Celia's parents. Normal couple conversations, except Evan knew exactly what the bracelet cost and who had really bought it. He also knew that by this time next week, they would both be living in different places. Monday morning, Celia left for work in high spirits. Big week ahead, she said, adjusting her lipstick in the hallway mirror. Naya's wedding on Saturday, and I have a board presentation on Thursday. After this week, life should get significantly calmer. I'm sure it will, Evan agreed. At 10 a.m., a process server walked into the offices of Cornerstone Transport Solutions and asked for Celia Lark at the reception desk. Evan knew this because he had asked Tommy to be there with a camera. The photos came 20 minutes later. Celia's face frozen in shock as she read the divorce papers, her co-workers looking on, the whispers that followed as she hurried back to her office. Tommy's report came an hour later. She called Adrian immediately. They're meeting for lunch to discuss the situation. Want me to record the conversation? Absolutely. At noon, Tommy positioned himself at a table next to Adrian and Celia in a small Italian restaurant downtown. The recorder he had planted in Adrian's jacket pocket the week before, another completely illegal but necessary tool, captured everything. This is a disaster, Celia was saying. He knows everything. The divorce papers specifically mention infidelity. How much does he actually know? I don't know, but he's been so calm about everything. Too calm. It's not like him. Maybe he's just processing, in shock, you know. Some guys shut down when they're upset. You don't understand, Celia said. Evan doesn't get upset. He acts strategically. If he's filing for divorce, he has a plan. So what do we do? I don't know. My lawyer says I should try to reconcile, or at least drag out the proceedings, buy time to figure out what he has on us. Screw that. Maybe this is good news. Now we don't have to hide. We can be together for real. There was a long pause, then Celia's voice quieter. Adrian, I need to ask you something. Are you serious about us? About a future together? Of course I'm serious. Why would you even ask? Because you're still married too. And if we're both getting divorced, we need to know what we're dealing with financially. How much debt do you have? What assets? Don't worry about the money. I've got something set aside. Rebecca doesn't know about half my accounts. Another pause. Then Celia again. What accounts? Offshore stuff. Cryptocurrency. Cash positions she can't get to. I've been planning this for months, baby. When the time comes, we'll have options. Evan listened to the recording 3 times, taking notes. Adrian was hiding assets from his wife, possibly illegally, definitely useful for Rebecca's divorce case. More importantly, he was lying to Celia about his financial situation. According to Rebecca, Adrian was drowning in debt and had taken out a second mortgage on their house to fund his affair. Time for Phase 3. Evan called Marcus Chen at Cornerstone Transport. I have a preliminary report ready on the Adrian Carnes investigation, he said. Could we meet this afternoon? There are some urgent findings you need to see. How urgent? Fire him immediately. They met at 3 p.m. Evan presented a comprehensive dossier documenting Adrian's sexual harassment of multiple female employees, his use of company resources for personal affairs, and his inappropriate relationship with an HR director from another company, namely Celia. Jesus Christ, Marcus said, flipping through the photos of Adrian and Celia together. She's the HR director at Morrison Logistics. This is a liability nightmare. If it gets out that one of our senior analysts was sexually harassing employees and having an affair with an HR director from another firm. He shook his head. We could lose major contracts. I'd recommend immediate termination and a full audit of his access to company systems and information. Done. Can you document everything for our legal team? Already prepared. Evan handed over a thick folder. This should be enough to cover any wrongful termination suits he might try to file. Adrian was fired at 4:30 p.m. Security escorted him from the building after confiscating his laptop, phone, and badges. Evan knew this because he had asked Tommy to watch from the parking lot. The photos of Adrian carrying a cardboard box to his car, looking stunned and angry, were deeply satisfying. At 5:15 p.m., Celia called Evan. Honey, I need to tell you something, she said, her voice trembling. Adrian was fired from his job today. That's awful. What happened? I don't know all the details. Some HR investigation. They said he was harassing female employees. Wow, that's serious. Yeah, and with everything going on between us, she paused. Evan, can we talk tonight? Really talk? I think we need to have an honest discussion about our marriage. Of course. I'll pick up dinner on the way home. Thank you. I love you. I love you too. Evan hung up and smiled. Celia was finally ready for honesty. Unfortunately for her, it was too late for honesty. That evening, Celia paced the living room while Evan sat at the kitchen table, calmly eating Chinese takeout. She had changed into jeans and an old sweater, her comfort clothes, and kept running her fingers through her hair nervously. I need to tell you something, she said for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. Evan kept his eyes on his food. I'm listening. It's about Adrian, about us. She stopped pacing and met his gaze. We've been having an affair for months. I'm sorry, Evan. I'm so sorry. Evan calmly set his chopsticks on the edge of the container and turned fully to face her. How long? 6 months. Maybe 7, she admitted, tears starting to roll down her cheeks. It just happened. We were working on a project together and he was so different from... She caught herself, then continued. From what I was used to. Exciting. He made me feel young again. I see, Evan said quietly. Celia blinked in disbelief. And that's it? That's all you have to say? Getting up from the table, Evan walked into the living room. Celia followed him, wrapping her arms tightly around her torso as if trying to hold herself together. What do you want me to say? He asked, not turning around. I don't know, she said. Yell at me. Get angry. Something. She wiped her nose with her sweater sleeve and sank onto the sofa. You're so calm about this. Evan turned to face her, his voice even. Would yelling change anything? No, she admitted with a shaky sigh. But she let the phrase hang in the air before continuing. Evan, I want to fix this. The affair's over. Adrian's life is falling apart, and I don't want mine too. We can go to counseling. We can work through this. He sat in his reading chair opposite her, his face unreadable. Is the affair really over? Yes, Celia said quickly. Completely. When was the last time you saw Adrian? Evan asked, his tone calm but firm. She hesitated just long enough to confirm what he already suspected. Last week. We were ending it. What day? Last week. he pressed. Celia shifted uncomfortably. Why does that matter? Because I'm trying to understand the timeline, Evan replied. When exactly did you decide to end things with Adrian? There was a pause before she said, when I realized what it was doing to our marriage. When I realized I was about to lose something real for something temporary. Evan nodded thoughtfully. That's interesting, because according to my private investigator, you were at the Jefferson Hotel with Adrian yesterday afternoon, in the presidential suite. You also had lunch with him today after he was fired, where you discussed strategies for dealing with our divorce. The color drained from Celia's face. You've been having me followed. I've been gathering evidence for the divorce. Yes. Evan! She started to stand, then sat back down. How much do you know? Everything. The Bachelorette video, the STD you gave me, the WhatsApp messages where you and Naya mock your husbands, your workplace affair, how Adrian bought you jewelry with money he stole from his family. Shall I go on? Celia stared at him in horror. What video? Evan pulled out his laptop and played the recording from the hotel room. Celia watched as she kissed Adrian, laughed, fell onto the bed with him. When it ended, she looked like she was about to be sick. Who filmed that? Someone who thought I deserved to know the truth. Evan, please, let me explain. There's nothing to explain. You made your choices. Now live with the consequences. Celia started crying harder. What consequences? What are you going to do? I'm going to let you destroy yourself. I'm just providing the tools. What does that mean? Evan closed the laptop and looked at his wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, with something approaching pity. It means Adrian has been lying to you about his financial situation. He's not hiding money from Rebecca. He's hiding debt. About $200,000, according to my research. Credit cards, personal loans, a second mortgage he took out without Rebecca's knowledge. The affair with you was expensive. Celia's crying began to slow, though her shoulders still shook. That's not... He said he had offshore accounts, she whispered. Evan didn't flinch. He lied. Adrian is bankrupt, worse than bankrupt, and now he's unemployed, facing multiple sexual harassment lawsuits, and going through a divorce where his wife knows about the hidden debts. Her head snapped up. How do you know all this? Because I spoke with Rebecca, he said evenly. She's filing for divorce tomorrow. She's also reporting the hidden debts to the authorities as potential fraud. Celia stared at him in disbelief. You talked to his wife. We've become quite close, Evan replied. Betrayed spouses have a lot in common. Her expression shifted from shock to anger. Evan, this is insane. You can't just destroy people's lives because you're angry. I'm not destroying anything, he said, standing up. I'm just revealing what was already there. You and Adrian destroyed your own lives. I'm just making sure everyone else knows. There was a long pause. Then Celia looked at him with pleading eyes. What about us? Our marriage? Our marriage ended the first time you slept with Adrian, Evan said in a flat tone. Everything after that was just paperwork. She sat in stunned silence. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet, desperate. What do you want from me? What can I do to fix this? Nothing, he said, grabbing his coat. There's nothing to fix. There has to be something, she insisted. Money. I'll give you everything in the divorce. The house, my 401k, everything. Evan looked at her for a long moment, then said, I already have everything. I transferred it to accounts you don't have access to. Her eyes widened in alarm. You can't do that. That's illegal. Actually, it's not, he replied coldly. I moved my assets to protect them from fraudulent claims. It's perfectly legal. But the house, she began, is only in your name, Evan interrupted. You signed the quitclaim deed 2 years ago when we refinanced, remember? You said it would be easier for taxes. Celia's face went white. You planned this? All of it? No, he said, picking up his keys from the coffee table. I planned for it. There's a difference. He walked to the door without looking back. I'll be staying at a hotel tonight. You can stay here until the divorce is finalized. After that, you'll need to find somewhere else to live. Her voice trembled as she asked, And where am I supposed to go? Evan didn't stop. That's no longer my problem? Evan took a step towards the door, then froze. Oh, and Celia, you might want to get tested again. Adrian was sleeping with other women besides you. Rebecca found evidence of at least 3 other affairs. He left his wife sobbing on the couch and drove to a Hampton Inn near the airport. The room was small and impersonal, but it was his. For the first time in months, Evan slept peacefully. Tuesday morning brought unexpected entertainment. Evan was halfway through his omelet in the hotel restaurant when his phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number. "This is Nia Granger. We need to talk about the wedding." He stared at the screen for a moment before responding. "Not sure we have anything to discuss." Her reply came quickly. "I know you have something on me from the Bachelorette. I'll pay you to keep quiet." Interesting. Nia was panicking. Evan typed a short response. "Meet me at the Pie Cafe on Boulevard at noon." He spent the morning in his office catching up on real insurance work. Around 11, Tommy called with an update. "Adrian's having a bad day," the detective reported. "Rebecca changed the locks on his house. All his credit cards are frozen, and rumors are spreading about why he was fired." "Any word on where he's staying?" Evan asked, leaning back in his chair. "At a cheap motel on Broad Street. One of the weekly rate ones. Oh, and his car got repossessed this morning for non-payment." Evan allowed himself a grim smile. "Perfect. Keep an eye on him. I want to know if he tries to contact Celia." "Got it," Tommy said before hanging up. Nia was already waiting when Evan arrived at the Pie Cafe. She looked nervous, constantly checking her phone and scanning the restaurant as if expecting paparazzi to burst through the door. "Thanks for meeting me," she said as he slid into the booth opposite her. Evan folded his hands on the table. "How can I help you?" "I know you have video from the Bachelorette," Nia said, lowering her voice. "I know I'm on it with Marcus. I'll give you $10,000 to delete it." He raised an eyebrow. "Why would I want to delete it?" "Because you're mad at Celia, not me." Her voice was strained. "This shouldn't affect my wedding." Evan studied her. She was beautiful in a curated, artificial way. Flawless makeup, designer clothes that screamed wealth, and jewelry that probably cost more than his car. Everything about her was curated for status. "When's the wedding again?" he asked casually. "This Saturday," she replied. "Declan's family's flying in from all over the world. We have 200 guests. The venue alone cost $40,000. "That's a lot of money," he noted. "Yes," she agreed quickly. "And if you release that video..." She didn't finish the sentence. Evan tilted his head. "What exactly did you do at the party that has you so worried?" Nia shifted in her seat. "I made some mistakes, wrong choices, but they don't reflect who I really am." "What mistakes?" he pressed. "I was with Marcus, my ex-boyfriend." Her voice dropped to a whisper. We had sex." Evan raised an eyebrow but said nothing, letting her continue. "It was stupid," Nia said. "I was drunk, scared about the wedding, and he was there." "Just sex?" he asked bluntly. "We had sex," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Yes, in one of the hotel rooms. It meant nothing, just pre-wedding jitters." Evan slowly nodded. "And now you're worried Declan will find out." Nia's eyes filled with tears. "He would be devastated, absolutely devastated. Declan's never been with another woman. He thinks I'm this perfect person who's never made a mistake." She dabbed her eyes with a napkin. "He's a good man. He doesn't deserve to be hurt like that." "You're right," Evan said. "He doesn't." "So," she looked at him hopefully, "you'll delete the video?" "I'll think about it," Evan said calmly. Her tone sharpened immediately. "What does that mean?" Instead of answering, Evan took his phone from his jacket. He tapped the screen and showed her a photo not from the Bachelorette, but from Tommy's surveillance the previous week. "This was taken 5 days ago," he said. "You were at the Omni Hotel with Marcus for 3 hours." Nia stared at the screen, stunned. "How did you... Why were you following me?" "I wasn't following you specifically," Evan said coldly. "I was investigating a network of affairs connected to my wife. You just happened to be one of the threads." "This is insane," she muttered. "You can't just spy on people." "I can investigate insurance fraud," he replied impassively, "which led to workplace misconduct, which led to infidelity. It's all perfectly legal." Nia looked down at the table. When she finally spoke again, her voice was hollow. "What do you want?" Evan didn't hesitate. "I want you to be honest. How long have you been cheating on Declan?" "Since we got engaged. 8 months." She covered her face with her hands. "Marcus and I have history. We dated for 2 years before I met Declan. When I got engaged, Marcus came back into my life, and I couldn't stay away from him." "Why are you marrying Declan if you're in love with Marcus?" "Because Marcus has no money." The words burst out of her loudly enough that other patrons turned. She lowered her voice again. "Marcus is a bartender. He lives in a studio apartment and drives a car older than I am. Declan has a trust fund. His family owns half of Henrico County. So it's a matter of money. It's a matter of security. A matter of the life I want. Nia looked directly at him. Do you think that makes me a terrible person? I think it makes you honest. Finally. Will you delete the video? Evan considered her question. Nia was right. His fight wasn't with her, but she was also Celia's best friend and an accomplice. More importantly, she was about to ruin a good man's life for money. No, he said finally, but I'll offer you a deal. What kind of deal? Call off the wedding yourself. Tell Declan the truth about Marcus. Do it before Saturday and I'll keep the video to myself. You're insane? I can't do that. Then I'll do it for you. On Saturday morning, an hour before the ceremony, I'll hand Declan a flash drive with everything on it. Video, photos, timestamps. Let him decide if he wants to go through with the wedding. Nia stared at him in shock. You would actually do that? Ruin my wedding in front of 200 people? I'd be saving Declan from marrying someone who doesn't love him. Seems like a public service. This is blackmail. No, it's a choice. You can tell him the truth in private and try to salvage things, or you can let him find out publicly and face the consequences. Nia was now crying openly, not caring about her makeup. He'll never forgive me. He might not, but he deserves the chance to make that decision. And if you don't tell him, Saturday's going to be a very memorable day for everyone involved. Evan left her at the table and drove back to his hotel. He had calls to make and plans to finalize. The wedding was 4 days away, and he wanted to be ready for either outcome. Wednesday brought news from several fronts. The first call came early in the morning from Rebecca Carnes. Adrian showed up at my work yesterday, she said without preamble. Security had to escort him out. He was screaming about how you ruined his life. Evan's tone sharpened. Are you safe? For now, I think, she replied. He's more desperate than dangerous right now. But I wanted you to know. He's becoming unstable. I'll have someone keep an eye on him, he assured her. Any news on the divorce? My lawyer filed everything yesterday, Rebecca said. Adrian is going to be shocked when he realizes how much debt he's actually in. Turns out he's been hiding credit cards from me for years. What amounts are we talking about? Evan asked. About $300,000, she said bitterly. Plus the second mortgage. He was borrowing against everything we own to fund his affair with your wife. Hotels, restaurants, jewelry, weekend trips. I paid for my own husband's betrayal without even knowing it. Evan felt a cold satisfaction in his chest. He'll be financially destroyed. And his lawyer says the sexual harassment lawsuits at work will be expensive, too, Rebecca confirmed. He might have to declare bankruptcy. Good, Evan said simply. The second call came an hour later. It was Janet Mills, Evan's divorce attorney. Celia's lawyer wants to negotiate, she said. They're offering a 50-50 asset split if you agree to a no-fault divorce. Evan raised an eyebrow. What's their leverage? They don't have any, Janet replied. Her lawyer knows she's in a weak position. The offer is pure desperation. Reject it, Evan said firmly. I want a fault divorce with full documentation of infidelity. Janet sighed. It's going to be messy and public. I'm counting on it, he said. By noon, the third call came from Tommy, the private investigator. He's been trying to contact your wife all day, Tommy reported. Calling, texting, showing up at her work. She's not responding. Interesting, Evan said. Maybe Celia is smarter than I thought. Or maybe she's just scared, Tommy suggested. Word on the street is Adrian has completely lost it. Drinking heavily, making threats, talking about revenge on everyone who ruined his life. Keep watching him, Evan instructed. If he becomes dangerous, call the police. Will do. Oh, and boss, Tommy added. Heard through the grapevine that Nia Granger's wedding might be in trouble. Rumors that the groom is having second thoughts. Evan allowed himself a small smile. Really? That is interesting. At 3 p.m., his phone vibrated with a text from Nia. I told him about Marcus. Everything. The wedding is off. Are you happy now? Evan responded, I'm proud of you for doing the right thing. Her reply came within seconds. Declan won't even look at me. His family's furious. The vendors are keeping the deposits. I've lost everything. Evan didn't soften his response. You lost some money and a few fake relationships, but you got your integrity back. Nia's final text was venomous. Go to hell with your integrity. I hope you and Celia destroy each other. Evan didn't respond. He put the phone down, feeling a grim, quiet satisfaction that Declan Vaughn wouldn't spend his life with a woman who saw him as a bank account. Thursday morning brought the biggest surprise. Evan was checking out of the hotel. He had finally decided it was time to find a more permanent apartment when his phone vibrated. Celia's name flashed on the screen. He answered immediately. "Evan, it's me," she said, her voice shaking and breaking. "Something terrible has happened." His heart dropped. "What is it?" "Adrian attacked me last night at my office," she said, barely holding it together. "He was drunk and angry, talking about how he'd lost everything, his job, Rebecca, his future. He blamed it all on me." "Are you hurt?" "Bruised. Shaken," Celia admitted, her voice cracking. "Where are you now?" Evan asked, already heading for the door. "I'm at the police station. I filed a report. They're trying to find him." "I'm on my way," he said without hesitation. When Evan arrived at the Richmond Police Department's main headquarters downtown, he spotted Celia in the waiting area. She looked terrible pale, exhausted, with a visible bruise darkening on her left cheek. Despite everything between them, the sight of her like this stirred a protective instinct he thought he'd buried. He sat beside her and kept his voice calm. "Tell me what happened." Celia stared at her hands as she spoke. "I was working late, finishing reports before the divorce hearings. Adrian showed up around 8. He was drunk, furious. He kept saying I'd ruined his life, that everything that went wrong was my fault." "Did he threaten you?" Evan asked. Her eyes darted to him. "He grabbed me, shook me, said if he was going down he was taking me with him." She touched her cheek gingerly. "When I tried to pull away, he hit me." "God, Celia," he muttered, clenching his fist. She glanced around nervously. "Security showed up before it got worse. But Evan," her voice dropped, almost to a whisper, "he's not done. He was talking about making everyone pay. You, me, Rebecca, even Naya. He's completely lost it." Before Evan could respond, Detective Maria Santos appeared in the doorway to the hall. "Mrs. Lark," she said, "we'd like to go over your statement one more time." Celia nodded, standing up. "Of course." As Evan started to rise, Celia grabbed his hand, squeezing tightly. "Stay," she pleaded. "I know things are complicated between us, but I'm scared right now. And you're the only person I trust." He looked at her bruised face, her trembling fingers, and some part of him still cared. Maybe always would. "Okay," he said quietly. "I'll stay." The questioning was thorough. Detective Santos probed gently but firmly. "When did the affair start? Had Adrian ever been violent before? Do you have somewhere safe to stay?" Celia answered quietly, without evasion. "I've been staying at the house, but if Adrian knows where I live..." "We'll have patrol cars drive by regularly," the detective assured her, "but given his state, it might be wise to find a temporary place to stay." Afterward, Evan and Celia sat in his car just outside the station. The silence stretched heavy and awkward until Celia finally spoke. "Thank you," she said just above a whisper, "for staying with me in there." Evan kept his hands on the wheel. "You don't have to thank me." "I do." Her voice trembled again. "After everything I've done..." She turned away, tears welling in her eyes. "I was so stupid, Evan. About Adrian, our marriage, everything." He opened his mouth to speak, but she held up a hand. "No, let me finish," she insisted. "I was bored. With us, with my life, with being a responsible adult. Adrian made me feel young, reckless, and alive." She paused, then added, "But young and reckless is just a nicer way of saying stupid and selfish." Evan didn't respond. What was there to say? Celia took a breath, gathering herself. "I know it's too late. I know you'll never forgive me. But I want you to know that I understand what I threw away. You're a good man, Evan. You deserve so much better than me." He looked at her, his eyes unreadable. "Where are you staying tonight?" "I don't know," she admitted. "A hotel, I guess. My parents live 3 hours away." Evan considered his options. The smart thing would be to drive her to a hotel and walk away. Let her deal with her own problems. But Adrian was dangerous, and Celia was still his wife, legally, if not emotionally. "You can stay in my room tonight," he said finally. "I'll sleep on the couch. Tomorrow you'll find other arrangements." "You don't have to do that. I know I don't. But Adrian is unpredictable right now, and I don't want you getting hurt worse than you already are." They drove to the Hampton Inn in silence. Celia called in sick to work while Evan called Tommy and Detective Santos. Adrian was still at large, but his car had been spotted near downtown Richmond. "We need to find him before he hurts someone else," Evan told Tommy during one call. Tommy's voice crackled over the line. "The police are on it, but this guy has nothing left to lose. That makes him dangerous." "Keep me posted." That evening, Evan and Celia ordered room service and sat on the bed watching the news. It felt surreal. Two people who had once loved each other, now clinging to routine in a place that wasn't home. During a commercial break, Celia broke the silence. "Can I ask you something?" Evan muted the TV. "Sure." She didn't look at him as she spoke. "When did you find out about Adrian?" He leaned back against the headboard. "The day we got the STD tests. Your performance in the doctor's office was convincing, but not perfect." Celia's eyes widened. "You knew for weeks and said nothing." "I was gathering evidence, making plans," Evan said evenly. "Plans to destroy me?" she asked, her voice hardening. He turned to her. "Plans to protect myself. Everything else was just consequences." "Fair," she whispered, then fell silent for a moment. The weight of everything unsaid hung between them. Finally, she asked, "What happens now? To us, I mean?" Evan kept his gaze steady. "The divorce will happen. You'll figure out your life. I'll figure out mine. And Adrian?" Her voice trembled slightly. "Adrian will face the consequences of his choices, like everyone else." By Friday morning, they had an answer. Evan's phone rang at 7 a.m. He picked up to hear Detective Santos on the other end. "We found him," she said. "Adrian Carnes. He's been arrested for assaulting Celia." "Is he in jail?" Evan asked, sitting up straighter. "Among other things," Santos replied. "Turns out he's been busy. Broke into his ex-wife's house, stole jewelry and electronics, tried to use Celia's credit card at 3 different stores, also left several threatening voicemails for his former boss." Evan exhaled. "Is he going to prison?" "Oh yeah," Santos confirmed. "Multiple criminal charges. He won't be bothering anyone for a very long time." Hanging up, Evan turned to Celia, who was sitting at the small table in the room, sipping from a mug of coffee. "Adrian's been arrested," he said. Relief washed over her face. "Thank God. For what? Breaking and entering, theft, credit card fraud, terrorist threats. He'll be in prison for years." "Years!" she repeated, her eyes wide. "Federal charges for the credit card fraud, plus whatever Virginia adds for the rest." Celia stared into her coffee, her voice quiet. "So that's really the end of all of this." "Of the criminal part, yes," Evan said. "Our divorce still needs to be finalized." "Right. The divorce?" She glanced at him, her eyes shining. "I know this sounds crazy, but part of me was hoping we could start over. Pretend none of this ever happened." "We can't," Evan said, not unkindly. "I know," she replied. "But if we could, would you want to?" He was silent, taking in the woman across from him. Still beautiful, still smart, still capable of laughter when she wasn't pretending to be someone else. But she was also the woman who had betrayed him for 6 months, who had given him an STD, who had laughed at him behind his back. "No," he said finally. "Not because I can't forgive you. Because I can't trust you," he explained. "And without trust, we have nothing worth rebuilding." Celia nodded slowly. Tears welled up again. "I understand. And I hope you learn from this?" She laughed bitterly. "What am I supposed to learn? That cheating is bad? I already knew that." "No," Evan said, rising from the bed to pack his duffel bag. "That actions have consequences. That other people aren't just supporting characters in your story. That when you hurt people, they might hit back." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "So, that's what this was? You hitting back?" Zipping his bag, Evan froze and looked at her one last time. "No," he said firmly. "This was me refusing to be a victim. There's a difference." 6 months later, Evan stood in the parking lot of Richmond International Airport, saying goodbye to a life he never wanted to leave, but couldn't bear to stay in. The divorce had been finalized 3 months prior. Celia had hired a lawyer specializing in damage control, but there was little damage to control. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and Virginia's infidelity laws were merciless. She ended up with almost nothing. Some clothes, her car, and enough money to start over somewhere else. Adrian was serving a 7-year sentence in federal prison. Rebecca had divorced him, sold their house to pay off his debts, and moved with the children to North Carolina to be closer to her family. She'd sent Evan a Christmas card, thanking him for helping her escape what she now realized had been an abusive marriage. Nia had left Richmond altogether after her wedding scandal. The last Evan heard, she was working as a real estate agent in Charlotte and dating a man who didn't know about her history with Marcus. Some people never learn. Declan Vaughn had sent Evan a bottle of expensive whiskey with a note. "You saved my life. If you ever need anything, call me." He was apparently dating a nurse from VCU Medical Center who shared his interest in hiking and volunteering. Real interests, not the fake ones Nia had pretended to have for his benefit. Flight 447 to Denver is now boarding all passengers. Evan picked up his carry-on and walked toward the gate. He'd taken a job with a Denver insurance company specializing in complex fraud investigations. Better salary, better position, better life. A chance to start over somewhere no one knew his story. His phone vibrated with a text message. The sender was listed as unknown, but he recognized the number. "Heard you're leaving town. Good for you. I hope you find happiness wherever you're headed. I'm sorry for everything." See? Evan read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. Some conversations didn't need continuations. As the plane took off from Richmond, Evan looked down at the city that had been his home for 15 years. From 30,000 feet, it looked peaceful, orderly, like a place where nothing bad happened to good people. But Evan knew better now. Bad things happened everywhere and to everyone. The whole trick was deciding how to respond when it happened to you. Some people become victims, some people become villains, and some people, if they're smart, patient, and willing to think strategically rather than emotionally, become survivors. The plane turned west, toward Colorado, toward mountains and snow, toward a future that belonged entirely to Evan. For the first time in months, he smiled. 3 hours into the flight, his phone vibrated with a notification from his banking app. His investment account had hit a new milestone. Enough money to buy a house in the Denver foothills with a view of the Rockies and room for the dog he'd always wanted, but Celia had refused. Money that had once been theirs was now entirely his. Money that Celia had helped earn with her HR director's salary, but had forfeited with her betrayal. As the flight attendant offered him a drink, Evan took out his laptop and started researching dog breeds suitable for mountain living. German Shepherds looked promising, loyal, intelligent, protective, everything his ex-wife wasn't. The plane flew through scattered clouds toward the setting sun, carrying Evan away from Richmond and toward a life where he would never again have to wonder who was lying to him or what he didn't know about the people he trusted. Someone might call what he did to Celia and Adrian excessive, cruel even. But Evan preferred to think of it as educational. He taught them that actions have consequences, that betrayal has a price, that some men, when backed into a corner too hard, hit back harder than anyone could imagine. It was a lesson he hoped they would remember for the rest of their lives. Below him, Virginia disappeared into the darkness, taking with it the final chapter of Evan Lark's old life. Ahead lay the lakes of Colorado, possibilities, and the kind of peace that comes only from knowing you fought back against the people who tried to destroy you, and he had won.